Thank you for standing by and welcome to the NWR Virtual Healthcare Conference for 2024. My name's Matt Wright and I'll be hosting the event. We're looking forward to bringing you a range of private and ASX listed biotech company stories over the next 2 days, as well as some extra sessions from some specialists in the sector. But without further ado, I'll introduce our first presenter for today, who is Gary Phillips, the CEO of Syntara. Syntara is a clinical stage drug development company targeting extracellular matrix dysfunction with its world-leading expertise in amine oxidase chemistry and other technologies for the development of novel medicines for blood cancers and conditions linked to inflammation and fibrosis. The company is currently managing 3 phase 2 clinical studies in diseases of high unmet need, with a further 2 potential phase 1C and phase 2 studies being evaluated for 2024. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gary to give us the presentation.
Thanks, Matt, and morning to everybody. Good to be here, and thanks for sharing your time with me. For those of you that aren't fully aware of them, Syntara used to be Pharmaxis, and I'll explain a bit about the transition from that company to Syntara and the exciting pipeline of drugs that we have going forward. So Syntara is a number of things. And the first one is we are global leaders in the area of science that we've chosen to compete in. We've got 3 Nature publications. That's the highest impact journal that there is in the world, and a pipeline of clinical stage drugs that target fibrosis and inflammation and the diseases that are driven by those 2 biological processes. The transition from Pharmaxis to Syntara came in Q4 last year. The sale of the Pharmaxis mannitol business, the exiting from the factory that we have in Sydney, secured a real boost for shareholders and the company in more than $14 million of savings per annum. So the cash that we have goes a lot further now that we've exited the mannitol business, and it means that the company's management can also focus on the clinical stage assets that we have and delivering data which will drive valuation improvement as we go forward. As well as that, on the back of that exit from the mannitol business, we raised $10 million at the end of last year. That was strongly supported by healthcare specialist funds. I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute, which gives us a runway out to the middle of 25. And the important thing about that date, the middle of 25, is it allows us time to deliver on several phase 2 clinical programs. Now, those of you that invest in biotech or are familiar with the biotech business model will know that the valuations of biotech companies tend to be driven by these trials in phase 2, where that's the first time that you see both safety and efficacy data coming out of the trials in the patient population that you're intending to treat. So it's a really important milestone for the company. We've prioritized a blood cancer called myofibrosis, where the market size, the sales in this area are more than $1 billion a year. But perhaps more importantly, given the kind of business plan that we have, exits of companies in this area with positive phase 2B or phase 3 data in the last 2 years have been in excess of $1.7 billion. So this is an exciting area to be in. We have a competitive drug program, and one which is attracting a lot of interest from big pharma companies who already have franchises in blood cancers. We've already reported monotherapy data, so the use of this drug as a single agent in this disease in Q3 last year, which is already reassuring. We've already shown a drug which is really safe and has some promising efficacy data. So this is already a de-risk program on its way, we think, to some really important data, which we are now engaged in a study which is recruiting. We expect to fully recruit by the middle of the year and have interim data by the end of this year. So I'll go into some detail about that as we go forward. So that's one of 4 phase 2 studies to deliver results. Now, if you look across our peer group on the ASX and look at other ASX biotech companies, you won't find another company with this number of phase 2 trials in progress and due to deliver within the cash runway that they have. The potential for value upside in Syntara is significant given the number of these studies that are ongoing. The first one of those is myelofibrosis. We also have another study which we're due to start later in the year, which has got a government grant in myelodysplastic syndrome. That's another blood cancer. And then we also have two studies, one in a sleep disorder, which leads to Parkinson's disease, and another one in skin scarring as well. So 4 different indications, 3 different drugs there, all heading towards a value opportunity by the middle of 25 within the cash runway we have. So you might ask, who are the people that support the company? Who are the shareholders? Who are the other investors that you might look to for validation of the company's business model and its assets? And again, unusually for a company like Syntara with a market cap of around about $25 million, we have a really supportive and very educated investor base. More than 60% institutional investors. DNA Income are a long-term UK investor, supported the company through the last few capital raises. Platinum Investment Management, some of you will be aware of. They're a thought leader in healthcare investments in Australia. The fund manager there, Bianca Ogden, is well known in the space, a commentator in the biotech space, and an incredible track record behind her. It's great to have Platinum on board and supporting the last raise and going from 8% up to 20% supporting the company in the last capital raise. So clearly have run the rule over our clinical programs and like what they see. The same BVF Partners are a West Coast US healthcare specialist investors, long-term investors in the company. Didn't follow their money in the last raise, but aren't sellers and are really looking to see what the company can do with the technology we have. So as I said, unusual to see a company with the kind of pipeline that we have, with the number of assets we have coming to phase 2 data within the cash runway, with this kind of institutional support, a real opportunity here for people who understand the biotech space and know what we can deliver in the short and medium term. The board of Syntara, we downsized when we moved from Pharmaxis to Syntara. I was delighted to see Kathleen Metters take up the chair role. Kathleen was the head of basic research at Merck for 4 years. A real titan in the pharma and biotech industries. Also ran Lycera, a biotech company in the US, which exited while she was in charge of it as well. So she's again really understands the science we're going for, and it's great to have her on board. Simon Green, ex-CSL, was the head of the plasma research division at CSL, and a broad business experience within CSL, and also running his own biotech company now. And then Harshanda Silva, who many of you know well, also is an esteemed analyst within the biotech space, previously with Peak, and now running his own fund, but somebody else who's a bellwether for success within the Australian biotech space. So an enormously experienced board, and one that with their support, I think you can see that the shareholders are well represented within the company. So what do we do? We're experts and global leaders in lysyl oxidase chemistry and biology. So lysyl oxidase is an enzyme. It's the enzyme which is involved in fibrosis in the body. Fibrosis is a biological process which underpins many diseases which we can now tackle. The 2 that we're tackling with our lead asset, SNT 5505, one is in oncology and blood cancers, and the other one is in skin scarring. The graphic on the left-hand side of this chart just shows what happens in the fibrotic process. So fibroblasts, which are existing in cells within our bodies, can become activated by, it could be inflammation, it could be chemicals, it could be physical damage, it could be genetics. But once those fibroblasts become activated by an inflammatory process, they start to secrete 2 things. One is lysyl oxidase, an enzyme. The other one is collagen fibers. The lysyl oxidase causes cross-links within those fibers. So these fibers are all loosely organized within tissue. They don't form any kind of pattern or structure, but in the presence of lysyl oxidase, they organize themselves. They go into scaffolding structures and become cross-linked between them. The tissue becomes stiff and harder, That stiffness is a feedback loop that prompts the fibroblasts to become more activated and secrete more lysyl oxidase and more collagen. And that tissue, that's fibrotic tissue or scar tissue, is non-functional. So whichever tissue it happens to be in, whether that's bone marrow or the skin, the liver or the kidney, becomes damaged and becomes less functional because of that fibrotic process. We have two drugs here which fully inhibit lysyl oxidase enzymes. In the case of 5505, that's a single, that's an oral dose, a capsule taken twice a day. And they inhibit those enzymes by around about 90% at trough with a tablet twice a day. So really hit the target hard. And when you inhibit lysyl oxidase, you stop the ongoing fibrotic process. And we can see in animal models, which we've published in many clinical publications, that you can reverse the fibrotic process. And that, I guess, is the other form of validation. We've talked about the shareholders validating the science we've got. We've talked about the board. We can also talk about the publications. And we have several publications in Nature, the highest impact journal globally. And we've had collaborations with global thought leaders, research institutes worldwide, who came to us when they saw the work that we were doing on lysyl oxidase, and have published their work to great renown. So these are all peer-reviewed publications, and you don't get here unless you've got great science. And these covers areas like myelofibrosis, pancreatic cancer, myelodysplastic syndrome, and skin scarring. All of them have received really positive acclaim from their peer groups and publications which review the science behind these things before they publish. So let's just dive into the studies, the ones that are really going to drive value in this next year, by the end of the year in the case of myelofibrosis. So myelofibrosis is a disease which affects, it's an orphan disease, affects 15 in a million people worldwide. It tends to be a disease which onset is in people age 50 and over. Once you get it, the life expectancy of these patients is about 5 years. It's primarily driven by fibrosis in the bone marrow. The bone marrow is the body's production engine for red cells, white cells, and platelets. So when it's damaged and becomes fibrotic, it stops doing that. The spleen tends to take over the production of some of these blood cells and becomes enlarged. So the current standard of care in myelofibrosis is a group of compounds called JAK inhibitors. JAK inhibitors directly target the process which lead to an enlarged spleen. So they do lead to reductions in spleen size, and they treat some of the symptoms of myelofibrosis, but they don't treat the underlying disease cause of the disease. So whilst they treat symptoms, these patients are not extending their life. The drugs also come with quite a heavy tolerability burden. They cause, in fact, cytopenia. So these drugs suppress the progression of abnormal cells in the bone marrow and in the spleen. But in doing so, they also cause low blood cells, in terms of particularly red cells and platelets. So there's a huge commercial opportunity here for another drug which can be added onto the JAK inhibitor. Whilst the JAK inhibitor controlling symptoms, something which could be disease modifying. Our drug, SNT 5505, has a very distinct mode of action. It's extremely safe in the studies that we've run it in so far, and a profile that's really suitable for adding on to JAK inhibitors to give an improved response from these patients. So that, and as I said at the outset, companies with drugs in this area that have got positive phase 2B data, so one step on beyond the data that we've got now, have exited in the last 2 years for more than 1.7 billion US dollars. So a really attractive space to be in. We've already had the first results from studies of 5505 in myelofibrosis. We've studied it in patients who had already failed on a JAK inhibitor. This is following the normal regulatory path that the FDA prescribed for us. This was done in patients recruited in sites across Australia, Korea, Taiwan, and the US. Half of the patients that were enrolled in this study had an improvement in fibrosis in their bone marrow of more than 1 grade. This is measured by bone biopsy. So this is a hard endpoint. It shows that the drug really is anti-fibrotic. That's no longer in doubt. I think the question now is, what clinical benefit do you get from reversing the bone marrow fibrosis that we see in myelofibrosis? And in these patients, we saw patients either stable or improving their hematological parameters, their red cells and their platelets. We saw improvement in symptomatic scores as well. Although we didn't see any improvements in spleen size during the study, we expect that to come with longer periods of treatment on the drug. So a really positive study. I should add that the study was extremely clean from a safety point of view. So unusually in myelofibrosis, these patients had no serious adverse events during the study. We've extended now and gone into a second disease called myelodysplastic syndromes, MDS. This is another disease of the blood where patients suffer from cytopenias. Again, another study that's been published in a Nature publication. We've received a grant from the Australian government, from the Medical Research for Futures Fund, which is supporting a study that we're doing with the Australian Lymphoma and Leukemia Group. And this study is due to start recruiting in towards the end of the year, and we should have the first data out by the middle of next year. So two studies in blood cancers, both of them due to report studies results by the middle of next year. The first of those, myelofibrosis, we're targeting. We're already recruiting. We're going to be fully recruited by the middle of the year. We've already got 6 patients in the study, and we expect to have interim results by December, when we're going to report at the American Society of Hematology. So, as well as that, exciting program in blood cancers, we've also got a program which is also targeting lysyl oxidase, looking at skin scarring. Scarring of the skin is a huge commercial opportunity. We're working with Fiona Wood, Professor Fiona Wood, in the University of Western Australia over in Perth. We've already completed a study where we've shown that the drug fully inhibits lysyl oxidase enzymes in the skin. It led to an unprecedented reduction in collagen content of the scars of 30%, which means we're actively changing the structure of the scar. So again, a drug which is showing that it really is anti-fibrotic. Those patients, we didn't see an improvement in their appearance. These patients had very old scars, an average age of 13. So we're actively working with Professor Wood now on designing a further study with this drug to look at dealing with patients that have younger scars, where we can see not only a change in structure, but a change in appearance. This is an enormous commercial opportunity and a really exciting one. Again, a study ongoing at the moment in patients with burns where they're having skin grafts. It's recruiting at the moment. We expect to have the study fully recruited towards the beginning of next year, and again, results by the middle of 2025. So with that, just I'll finish off just by a list of these studies. So as I said at the outset, you don't see these kind of this number of phase 2 clinical studies in any other biotech that you have in Australia, let alone one with a market cap of around about $25 million. The opportunity here for upside from results from any one of these studies is very, very significant, particularly the studies involved in blood cancers. I'm really excited about those, and we're really looking forward to seeing results before the end of the year. And the first of those studies, the scarring program, the skin scarring program done with Professor Wood, again, some results coming by the middle of next year, which we've already de-risked this with some of the results we've seen so far from the study that was done last year. And then finally, another study, which I haven't have time to talk about today, but is in a sleep disorder that leads to Parkinson's disease, which is fully funded by Parkinson's UK. So yet another validation of the company's science. So thinking about news flow and what's going to drive value, and thinking about when you should consider an investment in Syntara. Already reported a huge amount of news flow in Q4 at the end of last year, with the exiting of the mannitol business, the starting of recruitment, the myelofibrosis study, and the Parkinson's study as well. We expect to have that myelofibrosis study fully recruited by the middle of the year. Also the update on the skin scarring program announced by the middle of the year as well. And then moving into the second half of the year, starting recruitment in that myelodysplastic syndrome study, and another indication for 5505. And then I think the highlight of the year will be the unveiling of our interim data with those patients in the myelofibrosis study at the most prestigious hematology conference at the American Society of Hematology in December later this year. That will be the one that really drives the value as we go forward. So with that, I'll finish up, and I'll hand back to Matt and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, as you've alluded to, we'll now move to some Q&A. We've got a few minutes left, so if anyone in the audience does have a question, please feel free to send it in using the function within Zoom. Gary, the first question is, can you provide any context around transactions in the sort of space that you're operating?
Yeah, so I've mentioned a few times the sort of exit values, but maybe give you a bit more color. The JAK inhibitors that dominate the space at the moment, there's 3 on the market at the moment. Another one just came in recently. GlaxoSmithKline paid almost $2 billion for yet another JAK inhibitor that's going to take some of the market share there. Novartis 3 weeks ago paid $2.9 billion for a drug which does improve symptoms in myelofibrosis. It also improves some of the blood counts in myelofibrosis, but still comes with a significant burden in terms of the cytopenias, or the reduction in blood cells seen in these patients. So there is room in this market for a drug which is well tolerated, that doesn't cause cytopenias or reductions in blood counts, that does deal with the underlying disease processes and can be disease modifying. And whilst the data that we have coming out at the end of the year won't drive a $2 billion exit, it's only one study away from that, and it will be a really strong indicator. We anticipate that with that data in December, we will be back in front of the FDA in Q1 next year, and we'll be attracting significant attention from strategic investors, potential exits with pharma companies in the year after that, as we continue to report more data from that study.
Thanks, Gary. You've obviously got an excellent register of institutional investors you mentioned at the beginning. Can you speak to the level of DD that these funds did before they invested, and any context around that?
Yeah, I think Platinum, I think increased their investment from 8% to 20%. They clearly done their work before they invested in the company in the first place, and we were able to introduce them and other investors that came into the last round to key opinion leaders across Europe and the US to talk to about the studies that we were doing and the competitive space that we were in. So I think I think, as I said at the beginning, it's very unusual to see such a strong register in a company that's got a market cap of 25 million. I think any people on the call today thinking of investing only have to look at the quality of that register to realize that some people who are very serious in the space and have made money in blood cancers before have been attracted to us and the programs we've got, and have increased their investment significantly in the last round as our programs have matured.
And just lastly, Gary, viewers might not realise where you are at the moment, but it's no secret you're over in Spain for BioEurope. So maybe just to finish with a little bit of context around the focus of what you're doing there.
Yeah, so Syntara has a pipeline of drugs. We are, with the cash we raised in Q4 last year, we're fully funding the blood cancer research with 5505. We've got Parkinson's UK money to fund 4728, going through to the sleep disorder and Parkinson's disease. But with the excitement around the blood cancers in particular, it's important that I stay in touch with the companies that have a franchise in this area and are watching what we do. Coming to Barcelona and to BioEurope is part of that marketing process, the outreach process, to make sure that people understand when our news flow is coming, when they need to be watching the data that we have. And I think it's fair to say that the data that we had from the monotherapy study last year has attracted a lot of attention. We had an oral presentation at ASH in 2023 at the New Frontiers session, which is the highlight of the myelofibrosis sessions for the year, and people are now waiting to see what the data is that we release in December this year. So my job is to get them excited and hot and sweaty about that. So that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thanks for joining us very late at a very late time over there, and good luck with,
It's a pleasure.
with the meeting. And we'll leave it at that for Syntara. And in a few minutes' time, we'll move on to the next session, which is Imricor. So look forward to everyone joining us there.
Thanks very much, Matt. Thanks all for listening.